Hey, back at it again with water. This time we're on chapter 3. It's called Discovery. And last time, basically, the twins, Brandon and Meg, found two really wet stones and then picked him up and held him to the sun. And then I ended on a cliffhanger. So let's jump right in. It seemed like the stones were magnets and the sun was a piece of metal. Or is it the other way around? Is it that way at all? Meg would know. But I didn't feel in the mood to ask. I didn't feel in the mood to even talk. The stones rose into the air like little balloons. Except the balloons got bigger and bigger instead of smaller and smaller. I love my descriptions. Meg covered her mouth and screamed as loud as she could, and I just stared, my mouth agape. I was barely aware that everyone on this side of the earth saw this. Oh yeah, I guess I wanted it to be really dramatic and an eclipse. As the stones ascended into the air, it started to rain everywhere on earth, just as the sun had shined everywhere. Everyone shouted happily. I don't know how blocking out the sun would cause it to rain. I think it would cause a lot more problems than that, but my heart pounded so fast it sounded like a bullet train. I shook my head. This was impossible. How had this happened? Rocks couldn't even float, much less fly. Had we done this? Had Meg and I caused this to happen? Was this another dream? It sure was better than the last one. As the amazing stones raised even higher, someone on an island people in this world say is fantasy was not happy. Someone whom we would be meeting sometime soon. I don't know if that was the proper usage of whom or not. I'm pretty sure it's just who. He realized that we could destroy his plan. Someone this powerful could put an end to it, he thought. Animus got ready for us. This is him. Meanwhile, the rocks took their last 3 minutes to join together and block out the heat of the sun. I started laughing. This was impossible! Yet we still felt it. Our tans and burns were eased. I sighed, my mouth in an open smile. I was actually feeling cold. No one had felt cold for almost 5 years. Everyone except Animus was happy, too happy. About every person in Newburyport and the surrounding area was crowding us, shouting and screaming so much that we barely heard the horn that meant the boat was leaving. See, coming back with the horn. This is why I said that boats have horns at the beginning, because I was I just needed it for the plot. Meg screamed. It's leaving! Duh! How are we gonna get out of this crowd? I asked. Meg paused for a second to think. I could almost see her mind form a solution, then think of a joke to go along with it. This is the entire book. It's it's so serious, and then it's there has to be a joke. You mean, how am I gonna find Jess in this crowd? We need to go to the beach. Isn't the weather perfect? Stop joking! I yelled in all caps. She was especially talented at making a joke out of a crisis. She always had been, and most likely always will be. I hated her special talent. It made me frustrated every time she used it. I feel like this is just me being annoyed at my sisters. Okay, we go through the post office, Meg announced, as if it was obvious. I glanced over at that area. Sure enough, the crowd was thinner there. Thin enough for me to see the big brown doors with gold handles. Because that's what a post office looks like. I was relieved that Meg had such a good mind. Well, let's go while the boat's still in the dock, I yelled, since Meg was still standing there right in front of me. Suddenly, I felt the cool breeze leave my face and a hot rush of sun punctured it. Shielding my eyes, I looked up at our beloved stones, just to see them on fire. as they were falling. They looked like meteors as they got smaller and smaller as they fell to earth. I stared in wonder. "Come on, Brandon, through the post office," Meg hollered, beckoning with her hand. Now she was the one who was waiting for me, but I had a good reason to stand there, dumbstruck. "No!" I yelled. I sprinted after the stones. Meg probably thought I was crazy, but I didn't care. The stones couldn't fall to the ground. They just couldn't. I had to catch them. I had to! "Brandon, I'm gonna kill you if we miss the boat!" Meg screamed at the top of her lungs as she chased after me. The crowd parted as we ran towards the stones, silently gazing at us as if watching a movie. Most of the people ran away from the spot they thought the stones would hit. "But our stones!" I shouted, explaining my reason for running in the opposite direction of the boat. "We can't just leave them." And for the first time, Meg looked up. I'm pretty sure this is not the first time she looked up. But whatever. She gasped, eyes widened, and ran faster, like we were in a race or a quest. That sentence was a little weird. Most of the time I feel like my grammar is, like, pretty good in this. Like, honestly, almost better than, like, it is today. But sometimes, like, sentences are, like, weird. Both of our focuses, like that, both of our focuses were on our stones and nothing else, not even people standing in our way. In fact, I think I may have tripped over at least 5 people, but I was only keeping track of my stumbles. Wow. They slowed me down. We were never gonna make it. Meanwhile, the stones were zooming towards Earth faster than a meteorite, faster than the fastest jet. I was beginning to wonder how we were ever gonna catch them, and I know it's stupid to think about catching them, but for some reason, I thought they would lose their power or something after us not catching them, and they would fall any second now. I held out my hand with my palm up as I ran, in a desperate effort to begin to catch my stone. The calm serenity of watching a movie was lost, and people were screaming and running away. Someone shouted something at me, but I was in my own universe. Nothing else mattered except catching that stone. I ran as hard as I could, as fast as I could. My legs were burning as hard as my falling stone. I can't run anymore, it's useless. We won't make it in time unless... Suddenly, a dazzling blue light burst from my palm. It collided with the stone. Formed a light, glowing, bluish shield around it, slowed it down, put out the fire, and sucked it gently into my palm. My eyes were as big as baseballs. I don't know why I said it like that. But yeah, this is where the action starts, and I don't know, it's fun. I was, like, really good at action, but I was almost too good because, like, well, you'll see. I glanced at Meg. She was gazing open-mouthed at her stone. The crowd around us was silent as well. I couldn't even hear any birds chirp or any cars drive by. There was no other explanation. This had to be a dream. Blue stuff didn't just shoot out of a random person's hand. It just didn't. I almost laughed in disbelief. The only thing that brought me back to Earth, or Dreamland Earth, was the second horn. The boat was going to leave in 1 minute. You know how, like, boats leave in 1 minute after 2 horns? That's, like, normal, right? "Shall we?" I asked. Meg was looking amazed that I could talk. We charged through the double doors of the post office. We got out just as the third horn blasted and the ship left in the dock. So the third horn means the ship's leaving. The first horn, I don't really know what that means. The second horn means there's 2 minutes left, and the third horn means the ship is leaving. "Run!" I yelled. Meg was the clever one, but I was the better athlete. I got to the boat first and leapt on. The boat was still going across the dock, and Meg was still running to catch up to it. "Come on, Meg," I called. What if she didn't make it? What if she was left alone in Newburyport? She couldn't be. She had to make it. I couldn't imagine if she didn't. Megan raced to the boat and hesitated to jump. That was an occasion when she wasn't as clever. I think the stone thing affected her brain. Or maybe she was just afraid. I yelled at her to jump and she did. I forgot that she couldn't swim. Maybe it affected my brain too. I shook my head. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be happening. Meg had to make it. "Help!" she cried as she leapt gracefully like a ballerina into the watery depths that may be her watery grave. Yes. I mean, that's not good, but, like, I love that line. I shook my head. This wasn't happening. It wasn't happening. It wasn't happening. I had to think quickly. The boat was leaving Meg to drown. I saw a rope and tied one end around my waist and the other end to the metal bar on the ship. This is where it gets a little implausible. It's a good thing I was an awesome swimmer, exactly the opposite of Meg, and the rope was long. Otherwise, I wouldn't stand a chance of rescuing her. Geez, it's one crisis after another with us. that is very true. First moving, then stones, now this. Oh, stones. I can't believe... No, stop thinking about that. Just concentrate on saving Meg. I dove into the water, resurfaced, clawed at the water, and kicked my legs, breathing every 3 strokes. Concentrate on what they taught in swim team, I told myself, and you'll both be fine. So, if you haven't guessed, I was on swim team, and that's why I went to such detail, like, breathe every 3 strokes, because, like, that's, like, what you're supposed to do. Well, that's what they teach you to do, but, like, ideally, you, like, keep swimming and then, like, breathe, like, when, like, you can, I guess. Like, if it's, like, a race, because, like, breathing slows you down. Okay, anyway. Megan was clawing at the water in a different way, struggling to stay up. I could tell that water was filling her lungs and it was hard for her to get a gulp of air. When I got to Meg, she sunk into the water. I shook my head. She wasn't dead yet. I plunged and started swimming. My lungs were bursting, screaming for air. My eyes were stinging because of the salt water. He kept his eyes open. Oh my god. Everything was a blur, but Meg kept falling and I kept swimming, and suddenly the rope stopped. I wheezed as it caught my gut and yanked me back towards the ship. I kept shaking my head, as if that kept Meg from dying. I kept telling myself that she wasn't dead yet, but I wasn't convinced. Struggling with all my might to get closer to Meg, I called out to her. Meg! I yelled. I don't know... Okay, yeah, I guess you can talk underwater, but, like, no one will hear you. My mouth filling with water as it emitted bubbles. I choked out the last bit with my last breath of air. Swim! She couldn't. She had never learned anyway, and she could never swim in this condition, not this close to death. The tears came, and not just because of the salt water. I shook my head faster, but of course it didn't do anything. Death was inevitable. Meg's head, sorry. This is dramatic, I shouldn't be messing up words. Megan's head leaned as far back as it could go and hung grotesquely limp there. She reached out her hand and bubbles issued from her mouth. No, I called, choking on water, shaking my head even more as fast as it could go. Megan, no! But my 1 hour younger sister could not wriggle out of the hands of death. Yeah, it goes there. This is the 3rd chapter. Alright. And the next chapter is called Death. So I'll see you then when I talk about death more. That's this whole book, is just death. Alright. Bye.